Hi everybody, my name is Jay. I'm from Denver, Colorado, USA. Proud member of Cocaine Anonymous. I'm an alcoholic and addict.
Yeah,
Hi, Jay.
My sober date is September 20th, 1988. So, but for the grace of God, I've passed 30 years clean and sober in September. I've been asked to share today, and I'm honored to be here. They wanted me to focus some on my service story and then tell my story if I have time left. So I'm going to do things kind of backwards instead of what happened, what it's like, and what it's now. I'm going to talk about how I stay sober today. And a lot of it's about being of service. And that takes on lots of different contexts in lots of different ways. When I got to CA, I needed to do service because I needed to feel a part of, and I needed for that hour or 2 hours to feel safe, where no one was going to come address me for the consequences of my mistakes and my actions and things like that, and where I could just focus on my recovery. But being the shy guy that I am, I found myself in the service structure in Colorado. At the time, we had 4 meetings a week. It was very small. And my sponsor at the time had 6 months. And we kind of studied the steps and learned how this went together. We got this thing called the World Service Manual, as it was at the time, and studied it and learned how the structure was supposed to be. And being, again, the shy guys and gals that we were, we said we need to change some things. And I remember going to my first district meeting as a GSR, and they said, well, we've always done it this way. And I said, so why? And they said, well, we always have. And I said, well, but why? And they could never answer me. So he said, okay, let's talk about possibly changing this. And hence the change began. But in order to talk about that, I want to remember what I'm here for. And I'm here to stay sober, first of all, to carry the message that was given to me freely, and to pay it forward, and to carry the message and make the seat available for the person that hasn't even been born yet, so that they have a place to come when they're no longer a twinkle in their mom or dad's eye, and they're here. And in the meditation book that I was blessed to have a chance to work on, in the dedication we talk about the newcomer that's not been born yet, and that we're here to do service and to keep the doors open, and to carry the legacy of CA, and to have the shirts and the memorabilia and the things so that the doors stayed open for the next generation that has to be here, the people that aren't even born yet, or the people that are the kids of the kids that we grew up with. In a little while I'll share that I have 2 kids, a 31-year-old and a 35-year-old. They don't remember me when I was using, thank God. They still, my son, who's 35, remembers me at being a new dad. But I drug he and his sister to CA all the time. We would go things and do things like Addicts on Alleys bowling. We had the CA campouts, or we had the CA picnics in the backyard, or the delegate fundraisers. And they always went. There was a tribe of little kids running around that kind of grew up together in CA because mom and dad needed to be there. And my favorite part of that is that they still drink and use now. That's their choice. But they still know that I know it. They still honor that. Come see me afterwards. One of the things I'm on is the committee to plan the 2020 World in Austin, Texas. So I have some magnets to give you to save the date if you want. It hasn't been in the U.S. in several years. Those of you that can come down, please grab a magnet and go from there. I say that because my son and daughter are both going to come to that convention. My daughter is named Lauren, but is a DJ in part of her other life. Her husband is a DJ as well, and a fine musician. And so come to Austin to hear the resident DJs that are my second generation of kids in recovery. And it doesn't have to get any better than that. It's kind of great. For the first time, I have a 2-year-old granddaughter that I actually took with me to a CA meeting. So the second generation around, right? It wasn't my kid. I could take her home, change her diaper, and give her back, which was great. But I could still do the same thing. I was still being of service and going from there. So my service path has been like a lot of you, where you get voluntold to go do something, and you do it because you don't know how to say no yet and set boundaries, and because your sponsor says to go do it, and you go do it, and you're better for it, even though you go kicking and screaming sometimes. But after a while, they kind of find out that you can actually make a difference and plan things if you're that kind of a person. So before you know it, you're planning a day-long convention like this, or you're planning the area convention, or then you're planning and you get selected to put the bid in for the World Convention that was in Denver in 1997, and then you get selected to be the chair of that, because you could organize this stuff that most people can't even think about, but you had this crazy knack to be able to do that. So I did those things, and somewhere along the way I got a chance to go become a delegate representing the Colorado area and go to the World Service Conference for my first time in 1993, which was 26 years ago, too many ago, but I mean a long time ago, and to then be of service at World Service, doing a variety of different things over the years. All of those things have kept me safe sober. They've kept me on the path. They've kept me humble most days. They've allowed me to have my voice, and sometimes it's a disagreeable voice. Sometimes it's a stir-stick voice. Sometimes it's a yeah but voice. Sometimes it's a gotcha voice. So you get to see all my character defects and my blessings come out all in one time, right? But for the greater good, and I can say this lots of days, it's without ego, it's for the betterment of our fellowship that I get to do those things. But I always remember, though, it's about the person is going to earn their seat someday, that I have to be true to the virtue of what that is, and being able to allow them their chance to learn and grow along the way. So by doing that, I get to learn more about myself. Right now, I'm blessed to be the World Service Conference chair of the committee that plans the World Senate that Trevor goes to and Maria goes to, and some other folks have gone to or come back to. Jen's going this year, and help to plan that thing. But it's 180 cocaine fiends from around the world that have strong opinions, and sometimes more than one opinion on the same day, and we get to plan that meeting. And we get to plan how it goes and then let God work that week as the collective conscience of our fellowship. So I get to work on that. As I said, I get to work on the 2020 convention as the hotel liaison. So I switch roles and we'll get to work on that. And it's not something that I sought out, but they asked me if I would be willing to be of service because the person that was doing it resigned. And so I've always been taught when I get asked to be of service, I say yes, no matter what it is. Sometimes I have to figure out, what did I just accept? But I've been proud to say that I've never walked from a service commitment, except one time. It was about a resentment where someone called me a bleeding deacon. And they were wrong, but that's a separate story. I was just bleeding. I was not the deacon at the time. But I wrote about it, and we made good growth about the thing. So it's been a wonderful road to be involved and to be of service and to help carry the message. And to be around where we get to work on things like the meditation book. And I got to work on that subcommittee. And you get to work on it anonymously, which is my favorite kind of service, where your name's not even in it. The picture on the cover of the meditation book is a picture I took when I was in South Africa at a CA convention. Some of the pictures that are in there are when I went to Scotland and took a picture where I spoke there and a guy took me out to a lake and I snapped the picture. Or one came from when I was in Arizona at the World there and took a picture up in Sedona. You never know that from that. Or my favorite story, and I just told these two guys today, the last page of the meditation book, the last printed page is page 420. Do you think that happened by accident? That's a coke fiend doing his job, right? And now you look at that book a little differently, won't you? Also, my sober date is September 20th. There's a meditation on September 20th, which has my favorite quote in there about the children of chaos, which was a quote that Bill had in a book that's actually in the 12 by 12 but it's also in a book where I found it called As Bill Sees It. But the notion is that we're all a mess, and that we're going to mess things up, and we're going to stir things up, but God's got it, and God makes it right after the chaos settles. But the notion is also that acknowledging that we're going to mess things up gives us a chance to learn and grow and to fix things going forward. But so when I was on the board with Trevor, for the 1 year that we overlapped, we used that quote a lot to talk about, we understand why this is a problem for you, because it's a children of chaos issue. You messed up, our area messed up, this is why, this is what the tradition violation was, or the concept issues were, and you go from there. But that's kind of how it started. I've been blessed also to have a set of sponsees and to have a sponsor still. And I still go through the steps with my sponsor once a year. It's kind of evolved though. There's this thing that I've been doing lately that a lot of us have been doing called service sponsorship, where I take people and we study this concepts and the traditions together. And it's interesting, I went to South Africa and I was blessed to go there last fall and share at their convention. So I'm sponsoring a husband and wife. I won't sponsor women through the steps, but I hooked her up with a woman that we both know. But I'm sponsoring her through the concepts and traditions. We study them every week. And then for her husband, I'm going through the steps with him. And I get to talk to him every couple of days, and he's doing the work and he's on fire about it. But they want to learn what the concepts are and what the traditions are. And I would encourage all of you that say, what the heck is that? Because I didn't know what that was for the first 5 years that I was here. Those are a big part of the service triangle. The traditions, of course, we read them, we talk about them, we misunderstand them, we quote them, we bastardize them. We add like a 13th tradition, not just a 13th step. And we have a good time with them, but it's part of it. And these concepts are these amorphous things that you have to be in service to understand what they are. I have someone to explain them to you, or go to a service workshop. You don't. They're in our manual, and they're also well used, and there's 3 or 4 of them that matter. One, particularly about the 5th concept, is about when you think something's not right, you have the right to get up and say something about it. And you dang should. And when you do that in a service meeting or things like that, and you hear someone say different things, you go, oh, maybe they're right. But it's that redress of grievances in the 5th concept that's important. And I learned that in service by seeing it in action and said, whatever. Now, in the position I'm in, I get to write 5th concepts when I disagree with something. And I love doing that because I get to stir it up my own way and have people think about it. But it's about kind of being passionate for protecting our fellowship. And maybe I'm wrong sometimes, maybe I'm right. But when you get 20 people that are in service at an area service meeting or a district service meeting or a convention meeting, there's different opinions. And you get to let God work, but you get to talk about it as a group and come up with a group conscience and go from there. Some of these things that I've learned in service, I've had the chance to use in real life. In the States, there's this thing called jury duty. You probably have it up here too. Imagine that. And they usually don't like disbarred cocaine addict lawyers on their juries. It's another part of my story for a little later in our hour. But so I disclosed that on the jury form, and they still put me on the jury. Maybe it was either me or the lady that watched Judge Judy, but they picked me. And so, of course, what do? You know, there was a murder case with 14 possible murder counts, attempted murder and robbery. They made me the foreman. Imagine that. And so I ran the jury deliberations like a group conscience. We went around the room and everyone talked. And then we said, okay, well, what do we agree with? And they said, how did you learn how to do that? And I said, from recovery. I said, that really works. I said, I know. So we used the group conscience to convict these guys of 14 felonies. And it was just like, go around the room, see what works, come to, the concept about substantial unanimity. In that case, you had to everybody agree. But we'd learn how to do that. See, come on, Maria, I disagree with you on these 3 points. Let's talk about it. and you find a way to what you can agree on, and that's your conscience. You move the cheese a little bit. And so we did the group conscience that way, or we did the jury deliberations that way, and it worked. Who knew that that would be possible? Another time when my kids were getting older and they were in sports, I was the president of the parents lacrosse group where my daughter played lacrosse in high school. And those people were a mess because they had no recovery. They were just messy and controlling and egocentric. And I finished my year and I remember saying, I'd rather be in a room with 100 cocaine addicts doing service than 10 people that weren't. Because at least I knew where you guys were coming from. Because I have the same DNA you do. I don't trust anybody. I do the yeah but game. I have my own character defects on the fly every possible day. And besides that, I have a passion for what I'm doing. In the normal world, none of that really goes down that way. So I'm blessed to say that I'd rather have the tools that I've learned here than along the way. So now I get to share with you a little bit about my story. I've learned some things over the years. My friends call me sometimes Slogan Sam, because Trevor will too, because you hear like 20 slogans in the next 5 minutes. I apologize that in advance, but we'll see why they come along. So I used for 18 years. I don't talk about that I used too much and no drug log, but just so you guys know that I used for that long and that I am one of you, I tell a couple stories. My daughter now works in Colorado, which is the first legal state of pot in the U.S., where it was made legal. She left her corporate chef job and now is the head executive chef at a bakery that bakes edibles. Okay? So I'm proud of her. I mean, it's a huge business. I mean, a multi-million-dollar business, and she's 32 years old and is running the place, with the owner. And so I go there to visit her, and she says, "Dad, come here." And she has like a whole wall of their favorite pot smell and their pot on the wall and the safe. And she said, "Dad, have you ever seen this much pot before?" And I said, "Yes, I have. I used to drive it from St. Louis to Kansas City twice a week for 4 years to pay for college." So that's how you know. So I did that for sure. And I used to take the little punch and grow kits that go in the window and take my sesame and pot seeds and grow them and take the seeds out right in the house where I was married at the time. So I qualify, you guys. I promise you. Okay? I had my own high altitude brownie recipe, laced with opiated hash, brownies, topped off with a little cocaine on top. They're not selling that in Denver. But I'm saying maybe they should, because I still have that recipe on a piece of paper. But so what got me here was I had my own law firm at the time, and I was growing. I was 32 years old, and I had 30 or 40 people that worked for me, and we hit it just right in the crumbling economy in Denver at the time, at the start of the recession. We had the backside of your oil and gas boom here, where it had crashed there already. But we knew the cycle because it was a big oil and gas go-go town, much like Denver and Calgary, very similar, I think. And I remember the pressure of running the firm was hard. And I pretty much would do cocaine every day, sometimes up to an 8-ball. One of my paralegals was my dealer. I imagine that, I know you guys are shocked by that. And I would use cocaine at work because I was the boss. My name was on the door. And I thought that, it was not affecting me or my life. Obviously it was. And my last day was, I had done an 8-ball that morning and then gone to court and came back to the office, and there was a guy from the FBI, that's the Federal Bureau of Investigation, in Colorado, sitting in the lobby of my law firm. I think he's going to bust me for the drugs that I was buying and selling and going to court with or whatever. But he wasn't. He was there to talk about a case that one of the lawyers that worked for me had told the mortgage companies about. It was a mortgage fraud case that I knew nothing about. And so I had to go to that meeting pretty well juiced up, right? And got through the meeting, and then after the meeting quickly fired the lady who caused the problem. And then what do we do right after that, do you suppose? Do another line or two, right? That's who we are. So on the way home that night from work, I was doing the cocaine plus the alcohol plus the pot combination, chasing the same high, twice as much, half as fast, whatever. I changed every day. But some trying to find that blend to get home. And I get home and my pupils are about this big. My lips are dry. I've been using all day. And I come home and the wife, something's different. I walk in the living room and she's got the kids' birth certificates on the table and her wedding ring on the birth certificate. She says, "Did you use drugs today?" And of course my pupils are about this big and I'm doing this. And I said, "No." And she said, "Swear on these things that you didn't use today." So I said, being the good addict that I am, "What's it to you?" Of course I used drugs today. She said, "Well, here's the deal. You have a problem. And if you don't go deal with it, these things are going to go away." To which you can imagine what I said. I won't say it because we're on tape. And it has to get edited out anyway. But it wasn't very nice. It was not "happy birthday." 2 other words. And I said, "I don't have a problem. Even if I do, not your problem." She said, "You need to go deal with your problem or you have to leave." And I said, "Well, it's my house. I'm not leaving. But I will go to treatment." So I went to a little outpatient treatment where it was once a week for 10 weeks. And it was really too soft for me. It was like, let's kumbaya, talk about your feelings and maybe touch one surface and maybe do like a first step on what you're powerless over, and maybe a little unmanageability sprinkled in, and call it good. You graduate after 10 weeks and you get your coin and you go to aftercare for a year and you're cured. I said, I could do that. But I remember the lady from the treatment center asked me vividly, I can still remember this 30 years ago, what my drug of choice was. And I said, there has to be one? I have a cornucopia. I have a mixture. I have whatever I can get that day. It's a drug of now. And it's a drug of the con, of what I can get that day, and how am I going to pay for it? How am I not going to pay for it? Or how I'm going to get it, or how I'm going to trade for it, or import it, or whatever I'm going to do. And she said, there's more to you than meets the eye. I said, there is. And you'll never know what that is. So I finished the 10 weeks, and I don't do what's suggested of me. I don't go to aftercare. I don't go to meetings. I went to some CA meetings. But I don't get a sponsor. I don't do anything except stop using. And so my sobriety date was the date from that fateful night with the kids' birth certificates and the ring. And I was just a stubborn enough asshole to never use again. But that doesn't mean that I was anywhere where I needed to be. Because, my first joke of the night, if you take the alcohol out of the alcoholic, what's left? Ick. Right? I was just a sober, sobriety, not a nice guy. I would sit here with my arms crossed and listen, but I would be flipping you off underneath my arms because I was not comfortable in my own skin. I wasn't comfortable with who you were, who I was, having to be sober, having to do any of these things, except I just was not using. But so you all have learned that life isn't like that. We have to recover. We have to peel layers of the onion off. We have to then figure out our relationship with God, our relationship with ourselves, how we're comfortable in our own skin, how I can relate to Trevor on a given day when he's got his sickness going on and I don't, or vice versa. Or when we're both sick the same day. Watch out then. But all those things are there. So I spent the first year in that state of sobriety. And it was messy. It was horrible. The people that were surrounded in my life, my ex, and the people that worked for me were convinced I was using again. But I wasn't. So I didn't go at my year mark of being sober to get a coin. I had not gone to meetings after the first Twinkie meetings that I went to when I was in outpatient treatment. And so 16 or 17 months in, they being all my staff, my wife at the time and my dad, were convinced that I was using again. And so they did an intervention. And the Colorado intervention at the time was, they sit around in a room, they've all written a letter about how they experience you, they read those letters, and the or else comes. And the or else was either you go to treatment, or we're leaving, or we're quitting, or whatever the consequence was. So I said, that's great. A, I don't have a problem. B, I'm sober today. I'll swear by it. C, I'll go to treatment. I'd love a break. Because life was hell without my favorite drug, or any drugs. It's just uncomfortable. You're restless, irritable, discontent, and you can't stand your own skin. And my addictions have taken other forms, other ways along the way. And I'll get to that in a minute. But I was raging on some other fronts. Addictions come in pairs to despair, and deal with the addictions in the order that they'll kill you. So I was clearly doing other things. Work, excess, food, excess. Internet was just coming around. I was into all those things. I think I would be addicted to my kid's Nintendo game, give it half a chance. But it's that compulsive personality, and a way to numb my feelings, both good and bad, that were the manifestation of my disease, and at the time. So I go to inpatient treatment, and I'd made such a mess of my life and my practice that my law license got put on disabled and active status, and eventually I lost it for the mistakes that I made. And I get sued and served at the treatment center for $500,000 US, which was a lot of money back then, a lot of money today. And I remember also leaving my marriage 3 or 4 months later. So, here I am, unemployable with a very public bottom. And the only thing that I had when I got out of treatment was my recovery. But it took. I started going to meetings. I got a sponsor. I read the book. I learned the book. Some nights I seriously put the book under my pillow, because that's all I had to hang on to, was what was given to me here freely. And I became, not a thumper, but pretty much, I knew what was going on in the book because I'd studied it so much. I listened to the Joe and Charlie tapes. I listened to some of the other stuff that I'd read. I started going to conventions. I started helping plan conventions where we had inspirational speakers. I remember going to Salt Lake to the World in '94, and Dr. Paul, the guy that wrote the chapter on acceptance, was there. I didn't even know who that was until much later. I have his other books. I mean, he was there, and there was like 1,000 people from outside of the convention that came to see him, because he and his wife spoke. And he was one of the first guys that crossed over from AA and spoke at a CA convention. And it was remarkable and inspiring to go hear him talk that cleanly about acceptance, about being a psychiatrist and having to treat people. I had the chance that year as a new delegate to go to the Cleveland World, which was a great experience. We left the convention one day and went and saw Pink Floyd sober. With 100 people from the convention, 100 cocaine addicts went to Pink Floyd sober. The summer before I got sober in September of '88. That summer in June, I went to Pink Floyd and I was hallucinating on several things, and the pig flew across the stage. I said, whoa. So it was quite the homecoming for me in service to see the pig sober. Maybe you had to be there, but you get the idea, right? And 2 days later, one of the trips that the special events that the Cleveland Convention had was to go to Dr. Bob's house. That was the trip. So 10 of us got in a van that we rented, drove to Akron, and went in Dr. Bob's house for the tour. You walk in the front door, they say, welcome home. They give you a cup of coffee, then you sit at the table where this started. You walk up to 12 stairs, and there's 12 stairs, imagine that. And to the little room where they detox people. And I saw it, and I saw all the books in the case that all this started from. And you could actually buy a brick from Dr. Bob's house, of course that I have that, you know, because I'm an addict and a dope fiend, and I have to have that stuff, which is my roots. Because I have to be able to tell someone that's not even here yet, in my will, who gets the brick, because I have to pay it forward. But those experiences have helped shape my recovery, and they're just gifts, and they don't mean anything to anyone outside of these rooms. You know, the people, my kids said, "Why do you have a brick in your will?" And I said, "You had to be there, but if you give it to Rob, he'll know what to do with it." It's my one friend in Denver. So you get the piece of that, how that goes. But over the years, there's just been wonderful times like that. Coming up to Edmonton and speaking, and the people there was a native Canadian guy in the fellowship then that gave me a Dreamcatcher 3D that I still have, that I carried home, just on my shelf from that convention. And then I started to get the chance to do service along the way, and Trevor's the chair of the conference, which is a wonderfully honored position where he tells people, "You're out of order and my vote stands, and you could challenge me, but I'm going to win, so you should shut up." True or not? True. Okay. I'm kind of tight. But so, and it's an honor to do that, and you should get to see it because he does you guys proud. But at that meeting, when I got there, I was the vice chair for a couple of years, and I was not planning to do that. I was planning to rotate out because I was the first person that helped plan the conference and made it into what it is kind of today. It was just Children of Chaos for sure then, and the referrals were like on 20 pieces of stickies, and nothing was happening. So we made all of that over the years electronic and magical and come together. And while I was doing that, in rotating out, because the spirit of rotation was important to me, the guy who was the vice chair melted down on the conference floor, and it was Saturday afternoon, which is the big day of voting, and they said, "Who could do this job for one more day?" And they looked at me and said, "You're voluntold." And so they nominated me, I got elected, and then I got selected at the end of the conference the next day for 2 more years. In the middle of that, then I got selected to be a trustee from my region, which is the Southwest region. Which is, you guys are in the Pacific North region. So I was the regional trustee for my region for 4 years. And during that time, the board of trustees was 9 people, and we got to learn and grow and do our very best to protect our fellowship from that point. And it's interesting too, because it's backwards of what you think. There's this thing in service about the reverse pyramid, which is the trustees are on the bottom and the groups are on the top, and that's how it should be. But some people forget that, and they think they're on the top and they should be, but they're not. We're really on the bottom. And if you're on the board, you have a big target on your butt because everyone wants to do the challenge, yeah, but, and they also want to challenge your authority because that's who we are. I could be 100% right, but they're going to challenge me because this is me saying it. It's like the parental thing. So we get that. And then they'll challenge you because that's who we are in terms of just stirring stuff up and seeing what sticks and what doesn't. And you all know what I'm talking about, you know? And it was a wonderful experience, and I was able to finish my term. The joke about Trevor crying is one of my favorites because I was the chair of the trustee election committee the 1 year that he was selected. So I had the pleasure of pulling him into a room and telling him that he was selected, and he started crying because it was just tears of joy. And it's a humbling, honored thing to be asked to be of service at that level. Every level of service is humbling and honored if you do it right. Even if you don't do it right and you ask for help and say, "I don't know." From the woman that chaired the meeting today, or still chairing it, to the person that greeted me at the front door. All those things matter to what we do in service. But it's not always quite that easy. So back to my story. So I had nothing left, but I'm sober and I've lost everything, and it was kind of time to start over. So I started being of service to CA. I started going to meetings. I started starting meetings, but I needed to get a job. I was newly separated from my wife, and I was a single dad with kids. And I had some things to figure out. So there was a guy in Denver who was in recovery, and his recovery was very public. But he's the guy in the world who invented cable television. A guy in Denver. His idea. I wish I'd thought of something like that. But it was him. So I wrote him a letter. Didn't know him. I said, his name was Bill. Clever. I wrote him a letter saying, "Dear Bill, you don't know me. I'm really a pretty bright guy and very modest about it. I'm going to have a few problems, but you should hire me anyway, because I'll really help your company. And I'm in recovery, and I'm new, but you should give me a chance." So he actually called me up and said, "Jay, you have a lot of kahunas. See? You have a lot of kahunas, but you should come talk to me." So he hired me. And I worked there for 14 years as his lawyer and CFO inside of his company. And it was a safe haven where I could recover, finish my probation, do community service. He gave me the chance, and it didn't count against my vacation, to go do CA service. He encouraged me to do that. He encouraged me to get back to the community in the public sector and in my recovery sector. And I was able to do all those things. So talk about, being in the right spot at the right time and having an angel come take care of things. So my first blessing was that. The first of many, many along the way. And I continue to do the work, and I continue to do the amends, and continue to look at myself and work the program as hard as I could, and sponsor people, and be sponsored, and help parts of CA grow. At the time, CA was still small, and there was no one with time that was in Koanon that could guide the people that were in Koanon through the steps. So being the double winner that I am, I did a Koanon step study. So Koanon is still near and dear to my heart as well. And I was able to share with them what I had learned at CA and been given freely. And now the women that are and men that are still in Koanon that I still get to see when I go to their meetings carry that forward as well. So you never know when something you say can make a difference along the way. So I'm doing those things, and I have a really tough sponsor. And I went outside of the CA sponsorship because we kind of all were sponsoring each other, and it kind of can't be a tad incestuous. So I went and found an old crusty AA sponsor, kind of what I am now. His name was Merle, and he took me through the steps again, and we got to a fourth step, and we did it, and it was very different than the one I'd done before. He added some extra columns and things that I didn't know about. And we were doing amends, and he says, "Jake, let's talk about amends for a second. When are you going to make that amend to yourself?" I said, "Merle, I do that every day." He said, "No, you don't." I said, "Yeah, I do." He says, "No, you don't." So he does this Yoda backwards thing, which is like, the words are supposed to mean something that I don't know what the hell they mean. Much like life today. But so Merle said, "You have to think of something that you can't do and go do it." I said, "Like what? What does that even mean? To ride a horse?" He said, "No, something that will change your life that you can't do and go do it." I said, "What the hell?" So I kicked this around, and I said, "Fine. I'm a desk jockey, obviously. I could sit and write a 60-page partnership agreement with the best of them, but I probably can't walk across the street without getting winded. Not the greatest model, but it works for me." So I said, "Merle, I'm going to learn how to run a 5K, which is 3 miles." And so I go to the bookstore at the time. They didn't have Google back in the dark ages. You have to get books and read them. How to run a 5K, get the book, get the magazine, read it, go run the 5K, and tell Merle, "Hey, Merle, I ran a 5K, I made the amend." He said, "No, you didn't. That was too easy." "What does it mean?" He's like, "Okay, Merle, I'm going to run a 10K, double it. Double it down, right?" And so I go get another book. Now I get a magazine. There's a runner's chat group. So I go join that, because addicts do those things in compulsion, right? It's never enough. We always want more, and we always have to penultimize the experience along the way, because that's who we are. So I get the book, run a 10K, and go back to Merle and said, "Ran a 10K, I'm done." He said, "No." I said, "Oh, this is hard, Merle." So he said, "Something you can't do." He said, "Fine, I'm all in. I'm going to go run a marathon, 26.2 miles. You could do 26.2. So that's like serious. That's like 4 hours of trudging down the road to happy destiny. 4 hours in a row. Not like, like an hour here and take a week off and another hour here. It's 4 hours in a row. So what do you do when you're a good addict and you need help? Consult others, join a runner's group, get the How to Run a Marathon book, get the spiritual running marathon book. Because of course we have to maximize every spiritual experience that you possibly can have. Also, sign up for a group, which is one of the charities in the States have it. They have it up here for one of the cancer groups. And the deal is that if you raise money for them, they'll train you to run a marathon. So it's like a win-win. And so I go and tell my boss, Bill, that I was going to run a marathon to make my amend to myself. He writes the check out immediately. He said, now you're really pregnant, Jay. You have to go run a marathon, 4 hours. So I put the money in, and it worked. I learned how to train up and to run a half marathon, and then how to run a marathon. I ran in honor of a little girl who had leukemia. At 5, she beat it 10 times harder than beat in recovery, I think. And I remember running with her bracelet from the hospital in my pocket, because she was the real warrior to my minor warrior of being sober. And I went and ran the marathon. People from CA called and said, good job, Jay. And I remember finishing the finish line and 5 hours and 5 minutes. Long time. But I remember saying, I have me back. And so I was like 6 years sober and I'd run a marathon. I was turning 40. And certainly I was in the best shape that I'd been in. I remember learning to run meditatively on an 8 count. I remember learning to run thinking about what you might say at a meeting on the topic of recovery, or you might say on a meeting on the topic of the promises in the 10th step, or what you might say on a meeting about my resentments. And we go around the room, and I don't know you all, but it was the same people from Denver, what Jen might say. And think about that. And I ran thinking about those things, which taught me a ton about myself, about being quiet, about my relationship with my God, and about a ton about the next picture, because we addicts, of course, have to read the last page first to know what the book's about, right? So I ran the marathon, came back. I said to Merle, I wore my medal, my finisher's medal. I said, Merle, I'm done whether you say I'm done or not. And he just laughed and he said, it's just about you making the approach, Jay. And it's just, But it helped a lot. So once you run a marathon and you're an addict, what do? Sign up to run another one, right? Because now you're a runner, right? No drama. We're just going to go run a marathon. So I signed up to run another one. Team in training would waive the fee because I'm a veteran runner now. And I had my finisher medal, right? And they had a finisher shirt, so I wore that with a recovery shirt on the back. It was great. It was the best of all worlds. But I got asked to go do a share at CA UK number 5. Now I think they're number 31 or something like that. And it was the same weekend as the marathon I was supposed to run. So I said, CA speak in London, marathon from hell, number 2, I'm going to London. And so signed up to go to London, put the marathon off, and it was a spring morning where I was taking the kids to Utah, which is about a 5-hour drive from Denver. And the kids, this was in 1994, so the kids were 11 and 7. And I was leaving Colorado. And Colorado is like your mountain roads. And we get these crazy storms like you guys get. And like the storm that I came into on Friday night. Where it was like, an inch an hour unexpected with that perfect minus 8-degree temperature that we so spiritually love. But I was taking the kids to Moab to go take pictures and do the single dad spring break thing because it was my year. And a little sports car cut me off right outside of Denver, and I rolled 200 feet down a cliff with the kids in the car. And I was holding my daughter like this, and when we landed, wheels down, the kids walked away, but because I was off center, I broke some ribs, I broke my back in 2 places, punctured my lung, It was not a good day. The kids walked away though, but the doctors were convinced that what saved me was being in marathon shape. Imagine that. But I remember being in intensive care for a week, and people brought me in meetings. You guys brought me meetings to the hospital. And you would do that. You know that you would. I would do that. But it's just the fellowship that was there. And I'll never forget, again, my service led me to go be involved where I never had been fit before in a way to do that. But all this tied together and saved my life. So, of course, I was in the hospital for like a month. There was a guy named Steve who brought me a meeting every morning. And I never forgot that. I had the chance to sponsor Steve for a long time after that, too. Because he was a newcomer. Never met him before. And so I healed from that. And then, of course, then after what do we do? We're humbled. We're not going to go run another marathon, but we signed up to commit for it. So we went out there and served water. But it still went in honor of my commitment. And then from there, I at least learned how to run 5K again, and that's where we stopped. Because we, after some point, do things in balance and proportion where we can some days. But what I learned from that was there's no accidents. That as sweet as life was, it was sweeter now because I'd survived, much like my recovery. We're all winners by being here. We're blessed with another day. How many people have we buried along the way? People that don't make it back. We're blessed to be here. And we get to walk and beat hearts together for one day at a time, just together today, and there's no accidents because of that. What I also learned, though, was that I'm a tad stubborn, and that sometimes I don't ask for help a lot. And so whether I ask for help or not, people would come over and just take me for a walk or to do those kinds of things. And I remember too, and I kept having flashbacks, and even today, 25 years ago, in a couple weeks, I can remember the event vividly. And I learned a couple things from that. I remember that the physical pain that I was in then triggered other emotional and physical pain that I'd had since then. And I don't want to go too off the rails about geopolitical, touchy-feely, non-recovery stuff. But there's a meditation in there called Pain Begets Pain in our book. It talks about that sometimes my pain triggers other times I've had pain. And people use over that. I didn't use over that, but I certainly sponsor people that have. And now I understand why. Because they can't handle that, or they have the tools, or it sneaks up on them, like our disease is kind of bafflingly powerful and patient. It'll wait for us on those days when we're not spiritually fit and just bite us in the ass with even a quick bite. And it's about the pain and not feeling the good or the bad, but still being overwhelmed again from that. So I learned that from the accident because it was so hard. It was hard to heal. But I'd start having the flashbacks, and I had all these newfound things about from when I was a kid, my children of origin stuff. So I went to see a therapist, which the book says we can do. Merle said I could do it, so I went. And she was a lady who was a specialist on PTSD, but was also in the program. Imagine that. And so she walked me through the process and walked me through this pain issue and the challenges from it, and how I was lucky to be alive, and how I could put that in some perspective, and how I could use those lessons to share that, hey, this is hard, but we're still blessed. We get one chance to do this thing, and we need to do it all. So in service, I do everything I can. In my recovery, with my friendships, in and outside of this program, it's all because of that, because we can't miss any days. We got to be around for the grandkids. We got to be around so we make enough of a difference so that the doors are open for the people that aren't even here yet, that aren't even thought about or have picked up their first drink or drug yet. So I went through the sessions. What she wanted me to do as my graduation from that was to go find the people that saved us that day when we rode down the cliff and thank them. And so it was an interesting process to go find someone that saved your life that you don't know who they were because they were anonymous and have to go thank them. But any length, right? So I found the video online of the accident, because we survived, and it made news. We found there was 2 nurses that walked down the hill and took care of the 2 kids till the ambulance came and took me away. And she wanted me to go find those people and say thanks. So I go to Children's Hospital where the 2 nurses worked. They only knew their first names. And of course, they're not going to tell me anything. That they couldn't confirm or deny that the lady was even at the hospital, that she worked there. But that didn't stop me, because I had to any length it, right? So I go meet the hospital administrator and say, I have to do this because it's an amend to me, and I have to make it right and say thank you. He said, what's that word you use, amend? Turns out he was in the program. Turns out that he slapped his coin on the table and said, I understand. I know why you have to do this. So I'll make you a deal. The chick's name is Cindy. There's 3 Cindys that work on the hospital. Here's the rooms they work in. I don't know which one it is. But if they don't want to talk to you, then you'll leave them alone. I said, Scout's honor. On Bill's grave, I honor. So the second Cindy, I said, hey Cindy, this is Jay from the accident. And there's silence. And she says, I thought you were dead. And so I said, no, I'm here. I've survived. Thank you very much. But for the grace of God, and I would like to come see you to say thanks for being the kind spirit that you were and helping us out. So we went to their house for Christmas week, and we brought them a picture, and the kids brought them a picture, because these were just God's children helping us out on a random day, on a random Friday. And she explained the story that they'd gone up the next week and had put a cross up, and that she had my AA book in her closet because she found it from the snow, didn't know how it got there, didn't know how to give it back because I lost it. And it's all snow splooged and so forth. Word for it. Sorry. But so she gave it back to me. And she said, I knew you would come back and get this someday. So, and again, and then any doubt that I had about how this fits together, and I didn't have a lot of doubts by that. That, it just the rhythm of the universe was there, granting me another chance and a chance to do more recovery. So in some ways, I'm motivated to the chance to be able to do those things. I'm motivated for the chance to be able to give back and to pay it forward as well, and to learn more about you and more about me. I've got a few more things to share about before we wrap it up. And it's about the nature of my disease. As you've heard me share, my disease is about excess. But my disease is also about lots of different parts. As I said, I can be addicted to lots of different things on lots of different days, and even on the same day, that can change. But I've heard it said, deal with addictions in the order that they'll kill you. Addictions come in pairs with despair, as I said. But some of it's about my broken brain. My quote about that is, my brain's like a bad neighborhood. I should never go there alone. Or, as Trevor says, my best thinking got me here. Or, that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. There's that guy, Dr. Paul, that I talked about, that wrote the acceptance chapter, also wrote a book. In that book, he talks about a committee in his head. And the committee has one person that wants to get recovery, one person that does not want to get recovery, one person that hates everybody and hates his wife, one person that is confused about everything, and one person that's little J. And what I got from that book, and what I still pay attention to, is that that's my recovery DNA. That committee's never going away. I can tune some of them out, but they're all going to be there. And little devil J's on one shoulder and spiritual J's on the other shoulder. And who's going to drive the bus on any given day? It's a crapshoot. Depends who gets up earlier. But knowing that they're both there and knowing that they're never going away helps me a lot. Because then I can just be the conductor and acknowledge that Devil J may want to stir some stuff up. Because Devil J has a shirt that says, if you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much space. Right? That's who we are. That's how we started. And that's how we recover, by that edge and the stirring stuff up. Whereas recovery spiritual J is, oh, that's so nice. That's so loving. Let's just kumbaya the rest of it. And it'll be okay, Johnny. but it really is not, because Johnny's going to die. So we have to kind of balance all that stuff out. And so knowing that that's there helps me a lot. The second part of it is my disease is like a water balloon. It's going to leak out lots of different ways. Today, it can leak out, I can have 5 Starbucks, maybe. Or I can have played gamers all day long and not work. Or whatever the next compulsion is that I've missed. The Food Network, or Netflix, or binge watching Mrs. Maisel, or whatever. All those things, but what I have to learn is that balloon is never going away either. It's always going to be there. And I have to either move my hands really fast and keep moving them, or I have to acknowledge that it's going to be there and work on my recovery so that the balloon shrinks where I can at least manage it. But what we do normally as addicts and alcoholics, I've learned, is we use. That's our normal state. I'm never shocked when people relapse. Never. But what we get a chance to do is to not do that by doing these simple things. And by coming back and doing them again. And doing them on the day we don't want to do them. I can always mess this quote up. My worst day sober is still better than my best day using. I always mess that up, but it's true. So even on my worst day, where's God? Where's God in it? Goddamn rural. It's here. And you never get more than you can handle. You never get more than you need. But sometimes God has a really bad sense of humor. Or sometimes he doesn't. He or she doesn't. But I still get the chance to come back, do it again the next day, to give it away freely, and to also be in God's Spirit. At the conference this year, we had 180 people from all over the world with the same passion and zeal that your delegates and the Trevor has, and Jen has, and Maria, and the crazy guy back there. And the passion for it. We all come out different ways. But we, for the first time, had people put a sober date of how long they've been around, and they're serving at the world level of CA. And over the 180 people, the sober years added up to over 2,000 years. So the average sober was about over 10 years. So, I mean, to me, the equation is do service, stay sober. Do service, stay sober. Pick up chairs, greet people at the door, do service in your community, even with the existential people that will never be anything more than passive aggressive because they don't know any better. They haven't hit their bottom yet, but do service. And then you get to keep what we have and give it away. So that's been my experience, but that number was staggering to me because that's huge in terms of a testament to not just a bunch of people that want to stay sober, but people that want to make a difference, but people that want to stay sober by being part of a bigger picture and being around to do the collective conscience of our fellowship one issue at a time, one meeting at a time, one day at a time. I appreciate the chance to be here today, to ramble around a little bit with you guys, and to share some of my experience, Drape and Hope. Kind of a backwards way to do it. I didn't start at the beginning. I started at the end. But I love you all very much. Thanks for letting me share, and God bless.